Tiny bit. There we go. All right, everybody. How's it going? Go live now. Click on that. We're in business. Hello. Hello. Are we good? We're good. Okay, everyone. How's it going? Welcome. Welcome to today's Emerald Skies beginner-friendly painting tutorial here on Facebook and on YouTube. For those of you that may be new to my pages, my channel, my name is Jesse, and I teach acrylic painting, and I also teach how to draw. Welcome to all of you. We're going to give it just a minute or so to let people jump on, find the session. You can back the session up at any time, at any point. You pause it, even though it is a live stream. You are able to back it up at any point. If I could get a sound check, that would be fantastic. Let me know you guys can hear me before I continue. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself. And I mean, sign of a sane mind. Isn't that what they say? Talk to yourself. Talking to yourself is the sign of a sane mind. So I suppose that's a good thing. Okay, I don't see any comments just yet. I do see a bunch of people jumping on, so that's fantastic. All right, let's see. While you guys are jumping on, we're just doing some checks. Making sure that everything's looking good. Before I forget, I'm gonna switch this. Actually, not shit. What's happening, Angie? How are you? Rose and Mezzi, how are you? Fantastic. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the sound check as well. So again, folks, we're just letting people jump on. We're live streaming to Facebook and to the YouTube channel. For those of you that maybe prefer to watch this on YouTube, the channel is the same, Painting with Jesse. Okay, it's the same name as on the Facebook page. And for those of you that are on YouTube that maybe want to watch on Facebook, it's Painting with Jesse. Okay, Angie says, I remembered my coffee. So did I, although it's kind of hot. It's not too hot yet. My coffee isn't very hot. I've got coffee. For those of you that have painted with me in the past, you guys know that I will often paint. As I'm painting, I'll have at least two types of drinks. Tea, coffee, juice, water. I kind of combine things. So today I've got coffee. I've got some water. And then I've got this sparkling water drink what's it called? Spindrift. Spindrift. Don't know if I've had it before. It's okay. Nothing too tasty. But we are about to get moving here. Let me see Facebook. Check. There we go. First timer. I see Amy says. Amy Desert Hicks says first timer. Hi, Amy. Welcome. Kay Campbell says hello from Labrador City. Where is that, Kay? Labrador City. I'm not familiar with that. I don't think I've ever heard of it. But welcome. Zach Schultz says I can hear you. All right. Hey, Sheila. How are you? Sheila good as well. Sheila's painting with me in person quite a bit. What's happening, Brian? All right, everyone. So I'll jump on and say hello to some of you a little bit later, but please do, let me know where you're joining me from. First off, say hello. Let me know where you're joining me from, so we all know, where everybody's hanging out. Some of us are here in the United States. Some people in Canada. I think we got some people from Puerto Rico joining in, and then we got a smattering of people from different parts of the world. Australia, England, and then a few other spots. So to all of you, welcome. Once again, my name is Jesse. I do acrylic painting tutorials and drawing tutorials here on the Painting with Jesse Facebook page and also on the YouTube page. Okay, we are live streaming to both of them all, Facebook and to YouTube. Although this is a live stream, you can pause the session at any time, back it up. You just can't go forward in time, right? Unless you're watching the recorded session, which, that being said, both today and tomorrow are being recorded. You're going to be able to watch them at your leisure whenever you're ready to come back and watch them. If you're just jumping on to say hello, or maybe you're going to paint for a little while, and then you got to get going. Both sessions are being recorded. That is a question that's going to be coming up in comments quite a bit. So if you see that pop up, please let them know. Yes, Jesse said both sessions are being recorded. and they will be available for you to watch whenever you are ready to come back and watch them. Okay, I probably will be leaving this painting session up for at least a month, maybe a couple of months. We will see. Oftentimes, I will remove special sessions off of the page, but they'll be around for a while. So do come on back and paint with the live session, with the recorded session. If you're not able to paint the live session today, or if you want to do it again in the future, right? And maybe you try it today and tomorrow, and you're like, hey, I did such an amazing job. I loved it, or I had so much fun. It was amazing. Or you gave your painting away to somebody, you want to come back and make another one. The sessions will be available for you to come back and do so. This is a beginner-friendly painting. Okay, it is a little bit on the complex side with regards to the imagery, right? The elements of the piece, but we're going to take our time with it. All my sessions, whether they're painting or drawing, are beginner-friendly. However, these beginner-friendly workshops are specifically meant to be a little slower, so that those of you that are newer have a chance to take their time while we're doing the live, to ask questions and things like that. Okay? Throughout the entire session, if you have a question about something, please put it in the comments. Don't be shy. Even if you just want to say hello, put it in the comments. You guys can interact with each other. You can answer each other's questions, etc., etc. So today is part 1. We're going to paint for approximately an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour 30. And then tomorrow at 11 a.m. Pacific will be the same thing. We're going to paint for approximately an hour and a half-ish. And we're going to complete the piece tomorrow. Okay? So let's talk about our supplies list. Let's start with the paints. I have some white. Okay, titanium white. Now my brand is Liquitex. I like the Liquitex Basics. But whatever paint brand you got, that's what you're going to be using. Perfectly fine. I've got some primary blues. This is just a dark blue. Okay, the more you layer this eventually is going to become this dark, kind of really deep blue that's up in these darker areas. Okay, so primary blue. Then I've got some light green. This is light green permanent, but light green. If you don't have a light green, yours is more of a darker green, that's fine. Okay, because you're going to be mixing it with yellow. This is primary yellow. Don't worry about that too much. Whatever yellow you've got, perfectly fine. We're also going to mix these colors with white and a little bit of the blue to create the highlights in the sky, the Aurora Borealis. Okay, so we'll get to that in a little bit. But those are the colors. And then I've got black. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned black yet. Black is going to be used to darken the mountains off in the distance a little bit, the trees, some of the details around the tent, some of the darker areas you see on the ground. That's what we're going to be using the black for. Okay, so those are the paint colors. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paint colors. So nothing crazy, nothing fancy. Use whatever colors you got. Now, if you want to change your colors, maybe you want to add some pinks to your sky, maybe you want more yellow in yours. That's entirely up to you. If you ever look at pictures of the Aurora Borealis, or if you've ever been and seen it in person, something that I've not done, but hope to at some point in the future. There's some pretty greens, yellows, pinks. Yellows maybe not so much, but pinks and greens, especially from the pictures that I see. But there's even what looks like kind of almost whites, and yeah, definitely even a little bit of yellow here. So, and I seem to have lost one of my brushes. What did I do with it? I'll grab it here in a second. So, first brush that I'm going to be using is this big 1-inch flat brush. I'm going to use that to paint in my background. Now, we're going to tone the background first. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. We're going to tone that background in really light or washed out blue. We'll talk about that in a second. This is the brush I'm going to use for that. Big 1-inch flat brush. Okay, I am painting on an 8x10-inch canvas, which is what the original was done on. You can use whatever size you want. Okay, I've got a 1/2-inch flat brush. Now these brushes are a little dirty because I did practice a little bit earlier today. So 1/2-inch flat brush. I've got a number 4 flat, just a small little square brush. Okay, now the numbers aren't as important. Just as long as you got something kind of similar in size, you're okay. Then I've got this number 2 flat. It's a little small brush that we're going to be using we'll use this to make some of the trees a little bit. We'll use it for the tent. We also have, and I don't have it with me. I'll have to go over and grab one from my brushes in a bit. But it's a very small pointy brush, just a little kind of spear-looking thing. We're not going to be using that one today. At least not likely. If I decide I need it, I'll go grab it. But it'll be used to create some of the lines, the details, smaller stuff in the trees, and that part of it. We aren't really going to get to too much of that until tomorrow. Okay, today's going to be all about the big parts. Really quickly, let me look at the comments just to make sure I haven't missed any questions. So Zach, today's class is going to be about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half when we get started, which is going to be within the next 5 minutes. Okay, so about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. Same with tomorrow. It just depends on how much is left over for tomorrow. So I'm imagining about an hour and a half for sure. Tomorrow, maybe a little bit over, it just depends. Let's see. Paula Henley says, hello from a glorious sunny evening in the UK. I'm sitting by the River Thames. Sun in my face just before we'll start. It's slow descent for today. Fantastic. Paula, welcome. Cindy Parker says, echoing. Oh, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Thank you for letting me know that, Cindy. I would have kept going, and I would have just kept going, not realizing it, unless I would have seen your comment or somebody else's. But basically, so I'm using two cameras here, and I didn't turn the mic off on my other camera, so that should have fixed it. Okay, but thank you for that. All right, I see a few other people telling me about the echo. Okay, we got that cleared up. Hopefully, it didn't interfere with the instructions. I think it probably understood me. It was just not fun to listen to. But all right, everyone. So then I've got some paper towels. Very important. Always want to have some paper towels for cleanup. I do have a rinse cup. This is where my brushes will be sitting in between steps. I stick my brushes in there. I also use this to add a little bit of water to my paint, mixing water into my paint at certain stages of the process. And we'll be doing that pretty quickly at the beginning of this. So to all of you joining today, and to all of you that are going to be joining in on the recorded session, thank you so much. Cheers to an awesome paint day. Again, I'm going to start with my coffee. Not too hot. It's just a little bit warm. But that's good. Cheers to all of you. Here we go. First thing I'm going to do, first thing I'm going to do is change the screen so that you don't see me. Hold on a second. Where am I? There we go. I think I want to make sure that didn't go back to it. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. In this way, you only see, or you mainly see the canvas. All right, here we go. A little bit of primary blue goes right on my plate. Okay, now we don't need a lot of this at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tone the canvas first. Toning is a way to get kind of a base layer of paint on the canvas. I'm also bringing over a little bit of water. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my brush, just dipping it into my cup, bringing some of that water right over to my plate. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of my blue here, and I'm just going to mix it all together. I want this to be thinned out paint, which is partly why I'm using the water, but I don't want it to be too watery or runny. So, okay, something like this. Now this is really transparent. When I brush this on the canvas, it's going to look really see-through. That's what I want. So I'm going to start like this. Okay, but again, we're toning the canvas in this case. I'm looking for two things. I'm creating the blue over which everything is going to sit on top of. Right, this is all going to everything that we create here is going to be sitting over this blue. So this tends to create the mood a little bit. And you could tone a canvas with different colors that aren't in the actual finished piece. Like if you want a darker mood, you could use a different color like a dark brown or a burnt sienna. It just depends on what the mood of your painting is going to be. Kind of. That's part of what you can use it for. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm making sure that every bit of the white canvas is covered. Oftentimes, if we get right into creating the painting, the first actual layers of the piece, you often you'll see little bits of pure white of bare canvas coming through, and that can be a little harsh. The contrast is too high. So this helps eliminate that possibility. But you got to make sure that you're covering this up. Now, if you guys notice, I'm brushing at a bit of an angle, right? Kind of the angle at which I'm going to paint my Aurora. Now that's optional. You don't have to do it that way, but this does help a little bit in the long run. So what I'm doing again is just kind of mixing my paint in here, and I want it maybe a little bit thicker. So just going to go over some of this again. And again, I want to make sure that I'm covering my entire canvas with this, so no bits of white coming through. Now, if you've got a little bit of a light blue, right, some parts are going to be a little lighter than others, that's okay. But what you're trying to do is eliminate bare white canvas coming through. If you're painting on canvas, if you're painting on another surface, this will still help. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here really quickly is I'm going to take, so about a quarter inch of the way up. Okay, if you look at the original, about a quarter inch of the way up, I'm just going to draw me a little horizon line. About like that. And now I'm going to go across here at the bottom. Still the same watered down paint color. I'm just going to brush to the side. Okay. All right, there we go. And there's my plate, nice and messy. Okay. So again, folks, all that was primary blue or dark blue, any dark blue that you've got, whether it's phthalo blue or it's ultramarine blue, navy blue, mix it with some water to thin it out. That's all we did. We only mixed water in there. Okay. Hey, Angie. Okay, I think that answered your question. What's happening, Angel Miller? Angie says heat wave of 112 in northwest Indiana. Rain would be appreciated. I hear you on that. We were in Arizona, in Yuma, Arizona, yesterday and the day before visiting my brother. My brother lives out there, and it was about 113. Pretty dang hot. A little too hot. Zach. Hi, Zach. Yeah, my name's Jesse, okay? What's happening, Cheryl? Paula says, it's the second time painting with you. So you did the Hope Tree, Paula. Yeah, that was a special painting. Happy that you joined in on that. Although it sounds like you were in the middle. You were at midnight, painting at midnight out there, huh? Yeah, that was a very special painting session. A lot of people joined in. We ended up raising over $1,000. I don't remember the exact number, but over $1,000 for cancer research. Brain tumors, not cancer, not just brain cancer, but brain tumors in general. But okay. All right, everyone. So background is toned, and I want you to look at the background. It's see-through, right? The paint that I applied is nice and see-through. Now this is drying right now. I've got a fan in my studio's in my garage. So I've got a fan going, and this is drying fairly quickly. We're gonna take about another minute to let you guys all jump on this and get to this point, and then we're going to move ahead to the next step. Now, if you start to fall behind, understand everybody paints at a different rate of speed, right? Some of you are going to be a little faster than others. Some of you are going to be a little slower, and that's perfectly okay. Remember that you can pause the live stream. You can back it up if you missed something. Even if you just joined right now, you can back it right up to the beginning and start all over. Okay, so keep that in mind. Both on Facebook and on YouTube, you're going to be able to do that. 30 seconds, and we're moving on to that next step. Awesome, Cheryl, second time painting as well. Beautiful. Welcome to everybody. But if you're new here, a special welcome to you because it's your first time, or maybe it's your second time. Please let us know in the comments. As I said, let me know if it's your first time, especially. I'd like to know about it. First or second, third time, you haven't been painting with me for too long. Let us know. So Joanna Bauer says, hi, will there be recorded replay options? Would love to do this with my kids later tonight. Yep. So there are 2 sessions to this. Today's part 1, tomorrow's part 2. Both sessions are recorded. They're being recorded. So this is being recorded right now. And as soon as it's over, it's available for you to watch immediately after. Okay. So anytime thereafter. Hey, Amanda. No, it was just basically, I had 2 microphones on at the same time. That's essentially what was happening. So that's why there was an echo. But yeah, I do need to get a better mic though. I ordered another mic because my old one broke. I ordered a new one and it wasn't compatible with my computer. So I need to get a new one. But all right, everyone. So back to the painting. Here's what's next. I'm going to, the same color that I just used, I'm going to use it again, but this time it's going to be a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier. We're going to start to create 2 things. We're going to create an outline here of the mountain range and the horizon line. We're going to create a little sketch of where the foreground is. So there's water back here. Not sure how easy that is to tell. But we've got a mountain range. We've got a little lake or river, whatever you want that to be. And then we have the foreground. And this could be snow. It doesn't have to be. It could just be, rocks and dirt. But it looks bright because of all the glowing colors in that sky. So this step is really basic. Okay, I'm going to take a small brush like this one here, my number 2 flat. If you have one of those little pointy brushes, a little skinny pointy brush, you can use that too. Either one is fine. Okay, what I'm doing is I've got some more of my same paint, same blue that I just used. I grabbed my brush, I dipped it in the water first, so dipped it in a little bit of water, brought that over, and I'm going like this. Okay, a little thicker than what I used originally. First thing I'm going to do is right here across, draw just a nice dark blue line. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It can be a little wobbly, a little curvy, but you want it pretty level. Okay, that is the horizon line back there underneath the mountain range. Once you have that, you can come in and just sketch in your mountains a bit, just the outline for the mountains. Okay, kind of like this. And then my mountain range comes down. These could be hills. They don't have to be mountains, right? They don't have to be anything too big. It's just mountains or hills off in the distance. And so all we're doing is creating the outline for that. Okay, this is all we're going to do for now, for the mountains. Okay, so right below that, hi, Becky Adams, first time, huh? Fantastic. Sherry Sebelov says, first time for me also. Awesome. Welcome to all the new folks hanging out. Hope you enjoy yourselves. Next little step. We're going to have a tent here eventually. Okay, so what I'm going to do really light, I'm just going to draw kind of a curved line that does this, almost like a frown. A bit of a frown going on here. Do a close-up. Horizon line. The water is going to sit between this and this. That's where the water is going to be. About. We're going to have trees up here eventually and things like that. But that's the horizon line for the water. Right above that, we've got the outline of the hills or mountains off in the distance. And then right here, we've got the outline for the foreground. Nothing fancy. Don't stress about perfect. Don't stress about trying to match my painting exactly. As long as you've got these in a general area that's similar to this, you're going to be fine. Also, these are things that can be refined and changed as we go along. As we start to add paint to the piece, when we do the mountains, when we do the water, when we do the foreground, you can adjust the sizes of these things. So if this is too high, for example, You can bring this lower when we add the paint for the water. We can drop that down. Okay. What are you talking about? I'm sorry, Angie, a paint pen? What do you mean? I'm sorry. You're asking. So what I did is this is just a number 2 flat. Okay, flat brush. Just the regular number 2 flat. Okay. And it's a little square brush that I used it with. But again, if you have a liner brush, a little pointy one, you can do the same thing with that. All right. All right. Yeah. So it's a little flat brush. Okay. So we've got kind of the general outline of things drawn out. This is all the drawing we're going to be doing today. Okay. So don't stress out. If drawing isn't your thing, don't stress too much. Joyce Kilgore says, first time, glad to be here. Welcome, Joyce. Hey, Wanda, you made it. Awesome. Okay, now, switching brushes. We're going to use the same color. I've got my 1/2-inch flat brush. Actually, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to start with my 1-inch flat, and then we'll transition over to the smaller brush. Okay, so my big 1-inch flat brush. I've got my primary blue there. Once again, I'm going to dip my brush in my water, but this time it's going to be just a little bit of water where I'm just barely touching that surface. Okay, I do want to water my water. I do want to water my paint down a little, but not too much just yet. So all I'm doing is taking that blue, mixing it with the water. What I'm going to do, this is a very crucial part. Right in here, I'm going to start creating these darker areas in the sky. Now, not a lot of thick paint yet. This is going to work in layers. This is the first layer outside of the toning that we did. And I'm just taking my brush and bringing it down right in here where it starts to break up, starts to kind of get a little bit lighter. I can turn my brush slightly to the side. It gives me a little bit more control. Okay, and all I'm doing is, now again, folks, don't stress if yours does not turn out exactly like this. Aurora Borealis come in all kinds of shapes, sizes, colors, as I've already mentioned. Okay, so I'm going to skip a little right here, a little bit, to leave room for this, for the lighter areas. But I don't want to do it, and you can, but this makes it a little bit easier. By skipping some of these sections that are going to be lighter, I make my job a little bit easier. So I'm just going to skip over. I create a little opening in here where, again, leaving room for some of that lighter stuff. I'm going to come over here, and I'm using the edge of my brush. Come in like this. Nothing is perfect or super precise at the moment. We're in the early stages of the painting process. So because my paint is watered down, I'm able to easily create a bit of a transparent, almost wash of color. Okay, I was going to come back here and darken this back up a little. It's a light touch, everybody. We're feathering the paint through. And then maybe here I'll just create some streakiness. I'll give you a close-up in a second. Just so you have an idea. We're going to go from top to bottom. Up. All right. So again, everyone, we're taking our time with this. We want to go through this slowly. Make sure we don't want to go too slow, right? We don't want to paint for too long. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna work today for about an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. Hi, Desiree. Awesome. Welcome to you and your kiddos. Thank you for being here. When you folks see me looking down, I'm looking at my computer where I'm watching the comments and stuff. Oh, awesome, Desiree, your first time doing any type of paint class. Well, welcome. Hopefully you enjoy this and you come back and do it again. What's happening, Heidi? How are you? You're all the way out in New York. Heidi used to be one of the members in my group, and I have a art membership group here on Facebook. What's happening, Heidi? Hope you're able to get some time to paint. Hey, Sherry, there's one of my current members. She says, welcome to all the new painters. Welcome to all the new painters indeed. Okay, so we will come back. So if you notice this right here, these areas are quite a bit darker than what I've got here. We get there by layering. So we'll come back to that. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to start to add some of these lighter colors in here. Okay, so painting, acrylic painting, oil painting, usually is about layering. You're creating your imagery, your elements with a process of layering. Okay, so sometimes you're not able to create the darkness that you want or the lightness that you want in the piece until you go in and layer. Okay, so that's what we're doing right now. What I'm going to do now is I am going to switch brushes. I'm going to switch over to my 1/2-inch flat. Now here's what I'm doing, folks, and this is what you want to be doing, especially you newer painters. I want to make sure you guys understand this. In between steps, if you're working with acrylic paint, like most of you are, you want your brushes to sit in the water. You don't want paint to dry on your brushes. Otherwise, your brushes can get ruined. So in between your steps, as you use a brush, stick it in the water cup like this for now. There are better ways to keep your brushes wet in between your painting steps, but this is a very simple one that, especially as a beginner, you most definitely want to do. Okay, so 1-inch flat brush. Here, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a couple of other colors, actually 3 colors. I'm going to use some green, some yellow, and some white. Okay, and what I'm going to do, starting with my green, I'm going to take it. I'll show you what I'm doing here in a second. So I'll write on my same palette that I used, same plate that I used for my paint, for my blue paint. I'm going to put some down here at the bottom. Don't need a lot of green, but you want to get some green on that canvas, and then you're going to take and add in a little bit of yellow. Now I'm not going to put this right over the green. I'm going to put this over to the side of it. Now, some people like to have all of their paints already on their palette when you start. All the paint colors that you're going to be using in your session, some people like to have them out on their palettes. And I do that too sometimes. But it is very hot. And so I want to make sure that my paints don't dry out on me until I'm ready to use them. That's part of the reason. Sometimes this is a little bit of a looser style of painting. So there's my green, yellow, white. As I mentioned, I'm switching over to my 1/2-inch flat brush. Okay. Again, I'm going to dip my brush, just a little bit of water. I'm going to bring that over. I'm going to put it right here on the side. There's blue in my water because I've been dipping the brushes with blue paint in there. That's perfectly fine. Okay, this isn't going to create a problem because it's very watered down color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my green. I'm going to bring it, and I'm going to mix it in here. Okay, again, kind of watery. Then I'll take some yellow. I'll mix it in there. The yellow is going to really brighten things up. Creates kind of a lime yellow. It makes it look almost fluorescent. Okay, so for now, I'm not going to use it that way. I'm going to add a little bit of white. Now, again, this is really thinned out paint. I thinned it out with the water. Very important step. Okay, then I'm going to grab a bit of blue, just a touch of the blue. Throw it in there too, just a little bit, maybe a bit more white. Again, I want to emphasize everyone's colors are going to look a little different. Okay, now I won't know exactly until I put down the first layers of paint whether I've got the right mixture. Okay, that's perfectly normal. Okay, just to kind of remove some of the paint from the brush. I don't want it too heavy. You saw me do this, right? So here we go, right in here. Really light touch. I'm lightly touching the canvas, almost like a feathering. I'm using the very tip of the bristles. Again, this is my 1/2-inch flat brush, and I'm just pulling this through. Now, down where the outline for my mountains are, if I go past that, that's okay. When I cover those up with the dark colors that I'm going to use to cover those mountains up, you're not going to see this. But again, I'm just feathering through. Some areas are going to be a little lighter. Some areas are going to be a little darker. Watch how I'm holding my brush. I'm not holding it up here being super precise. I want there to be a looseness to this. So I'm holding my brush back here. Okay, here we go. Hey folks, if any of I know there's going to be a few of my art membership painters joining today. If you guys see any questions that you know the answers to, please help me by addressing those, right? If somebody asks anything that you can answer, because I'm not always looking at the comments, it would be fantastic if you guys could help fill that in for me, okay? If you're able to. I know you're also painting along. So again, real nice and feathery, just light. Some areas are going to get a little lighter than others. That's what you want. You want some variation. There's also a little bit of a randomness in here. I'm not trying to control every single part of my brush strokes. I want this nice and easy. But if some areas are a little lighter than others, and maybe, I wasn't necessarily planning for that. Let's say I'm planning for this area in here to be lighter, but it gets a little lighter over here or a little lighter over here. That's okay. You can go with it. It is an Aurora Borealis. And again, they come in different shapes, colors. There's quite a bit of variety. So still just using the same color, and I'm putting the paint down nice and transparent by having very little on my brush. I don't want to go too high up with this color. I'm going to change things up here in just a little bit. Now I'm going to come over here a little more where it starts to lighten up. You notice how I brush over the same areas repeatedly. Where I want these little skinny lines, I turn my brush to the edge like this. Instead of using the broad brush like this, I'm turning it like this. And just lightly, once again, lightly. We're feathering. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit more white. I want some areas that are a little lighter. Okay, I'm going to mix more white in here so that just this area, here's the original mixture, the darker area. Over here I've got a little bit of a lighter one now. I'm going to dip my brush in that water, and I could have done it first or afterwards, doesn't matter too much. I'm mixing my paint or the white into my paint. Now let me see, I won't know. That's pretty good. I think I like it. Okay, if it gets too intense, let's say it gets a little too intense for what I want. I can take a little paper towel and just lightly go over this, remove some of it, and reduces the intensity. Okay, there's a little trick to use right there. Now let me thin this out a bit more. It's a little too intense, so I'm just taking my brush, dipping it in that water, and I'm thinning it out. Again, everyone, don't stress out if you're falling behind, or you can back the video up at any point. You could also, if you get too far behind or you get tired or what have you, you can you can stop painting and come back and paint with a recorded session when you're ready. Okay. What you want to do is relax through this as much as you can. Painting is about relaxing, enjoying the process as much as you can. Focus less, and I know it's kind of hard to do. Focus less on the results, on the end results, as you do on the process. If you're able to enjoy the process, two things are going to happen. You're going to enjoy it a bit more, but also you're more likely to come back and paint. Especially as a newer painter, it's really easy to get frustrated. That is normal. That doesn't mean you're a bad painter or it's not for you or anything like that. It's normal. I still get frustrated sometimes. You just got to remind yourself. Relax a little bit. Just relax. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of the blue now. And I took some of this color, brought it over here. Just going to kind of combine those colors. Just to come in here. And what we're creating is variation. Again, very smooth brush strokes. I pull and I go back and forth. Use the edge of my brush. But definitely, if you can kind of remind yourself to just relax. Remember, let's say, especially if you're a newer painter and you're You're painting for your second time, third time, whatever it is, your first time. You're still in the really, really early stages of the learning process. You're still trying to figure out how to mix your paint, how much water to add, what brush to use. And on top of that, you also have to focus on, creating a design, creating this painting. It's okay. You understand that it's a lot of things to stay on top of. So just be kind to yourself. Okay, so here we go. Things are looking pretty. And again, look what I'm doing. I'm just smoothing. There's very little paint on my brush. I'm just going through, smoothing things through, using a little bit of paint. Okay, I grab a little bit of paint. I'm going to take a little more yellow now. Mix it in here. I want to create some lighter yellow areas, or really, really kind of not quite yellow necessarily, but areas that look more yellowish in comparison to the rest. And again, the trick, take a little bit of water, mix it in there, thin it out, remove some of that so you don't have a lot of paint on your brush. And then here we go. I'll start down here. Down in this area, right in here, is where the most intensity is, at least on the original. And I'll try to do the same thing on this one. Now here I'm painting slightly to the side at a different angle. I'm bringing it down this way instead of going like this. Okay. And in a moment, I'll look at your comments, see if you guys have any questions for me. But definitely, everybody, you want to try to relax. Enjoy the process. Still using that yellowish paint that I just mixed. Okay, last step for this for now, for this part of the painting for now. I'm going to take quite a bit of white, mix it in here, take some more of my blue. I'm going to create kind of a lightish, really light kind of teal color. White, blue, and then of course there's the green and yellow that I started off with. Water. So we thin this out. Okay, remove some of that paint. So there's not a whole lot on the brush. Right in here. Okay, now that's a little too much yellow, so more water, more white, a little more of the blue. Okay, and here we go. It's a little too strong, but I can go with it, or I can remove it, whichever. Using the skinny part of my brush to make more lines. Okay. All right. Give me a second. Look at your comments. Give you a moment also to kind of catch up on that. Okay, absolutely. So you can most definitely, this is being recorded. You'll be able to come back and watch it afterwards. Excuse me. So again, we're doing a two-parter, right? Today's part one, tomorrow's part two, both sessions. You can even, watch during the live and then right at the end of it, back it up to the beginning and start painting again. Up to you. But yes, the recording will be available for you. Sheila says, I'm relaxing. Oh, my mix on the canvas looks like mocos. That's funny. She says it looks like boogers. There's a little bit of a boogerish color to this painting. Let's see. Is the rooster in the tent? What? What the heck, Dave? The rooster in the tent? Yes. Yes, it is. Lisa, first timers from Oklahoma. Hi, Lisa. Welcome. Okay. All right, everybody. So we're going to leave the Aurora part of it alone for a little bit. We're going to come back up here and make this darker. As we make these areas up in here, right, these darker, this starts to stand out more. Okay, right now it looks a little bit washed out because the colors, because this isn't giving this enough contrast. It still looks pretty cool as is. You could even come in if you wanted to, add stars to your sky, and you'll probably be okay. But by making this darker, this is then going to stand out some more. Okay, so it really is about preference. It's about what you're trying to go for. But we're going to add some more of that blue right over this, and that's going to get quite a bit darker. Okay, so 30 seconds while I take a drink of my coffee. What time do we got? Okay, I need to make sure I'm keeping track of that time. Can't go too slow, but we can't go too fast, but we can't go too slow. So I still have a little bit of my dark blue on the palette, but I'm going to need some more. So let me go ahead and put some more out here. So for those of you that are newer to the group, welcome. Don't forget to like and follow the page. That's how you're able to kind of keep up with all the events that I have on here. But also, if you can, I do have an email list, the Painting with Jesse email list that I send out updates to. Whenever I have one of these free live sessions or whatever's going on, I'll send out an email to the group. So it makes it easier for you not to miss what's going on the page. I don't have a link to it at the moment, but I will post a link immediately afterwards on the event page, and then on the Painting with Jesse page, the direct page, a link to the email list. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. But if you have not followed the page, please do so that way you get alerted whenever I post stuff. Okay, lots of free material on here that I post. I also have a membership group, as I mentioned, and whenever I open the doors to that to let new people in, I post about that as well. All right, so back to my blue, primary blue. Very little water now. I do have some water in there, but just a little bit. As I layer on here, whether I've got water in here or not, as I begin to layer, it starts to get darker. Now, the reason why you add water to your acrylic paint is because it does make it flow a little bit better. Do you have to add water every time? No. It depends on what you're going for. Also, every brand is a little different. Some acrylic paint flows a little bit better than others. Some acrylic paint is a little thicker. And so you have to adjust for that a bit. And if you're newer to painting, don't stress about that part of it. You'll learn as you go. The more you paint, the more you begin to realize, for your paint, what you've got to do. Now, Liquitex, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's one of my favorite paints for beginners. I do recommend it because it has really nice, rich colors, has really nice flow to it. And you can pick that up online. You can pick it up at Hobby Lobby, or I think Michael's carries them too, if I'm not mistaken. So right in here, everybody, I'm using the skinny part of my brush. I'm pulling through here. Okay, making it kind of streaky. Other times I change back to the broad part of the brush like this. Sorry, folks, if I'm blocking your view, I apologize. I'm trying to avoid that, but it's a little tricky sometimes to not block you. Okay, I can also, to begin with, if it's kind of a tougher area to get to, I can paint like this, just brush it right on, like sideways at a different angle, and then I'll come in here and then redirect it. And I could kind of do this where I bring it in a little bit. Remember, light touches, vary your brush strokes. Sometimes this is generally a really light touch, but in some cases you can go a little bit harder to get more paint to stick to the canvas. But you're noticing now, right? I'm hoping you're noticing that as I'm creating these darker areas in the sky, that the lighter areas start to pop out somewhere, standing out more. That's what we're looking for. And again, maybe we're going to need, at least I am, I'm going to need at least one more layer of this dark blue paint to get things as dark as the original. At least one more layer, maybe two more. Again, I mentioned acrylic painting is about layering. So all this is right now is blue and water. Okay, a little bit of water. So okay. Very little paint left on my brush right now. I'm just kind of brushing around. Angela says, I saw the Northern Lights in Iceland. Beautiful. Painting with you for the first time from Washington State. Welcome, Angela. Lucky you. It's on my bucket list. One day, I hope to go there and maybe do a live painting. Maybe not live like on camera, but do it, paint it as I'm looking at the sky. Okay. I'm trying to remember what that's called, that type of painting. I'm drawing a blank at the moment. Al fresco? Or is that a food reference? I don't know. Kelly Renee from Illinois. Hi, Kelly. How are you? Welcome. Watching from Northeast Florida, says Beverly. Hi, Beverly. Welcome. Welcome, welcome. For those of you that don't know, I'm out here in California. Today's probably going to be about 105 degrees, Southern California. About 105 degrees if I had to guess. I haven't looked at the weather forecast. Okay, now that I've got this blue in the sky, I'm letting this dry. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Aurora Borealis part, the colors, right? The colorful part of all this. So I've got all this blue paint in my brush. I'm going to do this. Rinse it out a bit. Now, of course, the water has blue in it, primarily blue. It's turned to a bit of an aqua color, but it's primarily blue. That's okay. Now, I like to use plates, everyone, for my mixtures. I do have wet palette that I sometimes use. Whoops, what am I doing? Lost track of what I'm doing there. But for these live sessions, unless I really need my wet palette, I like to use plates for this. Okay, a little bit of water. Now, this is pretty much dry right here. It's already dried out. So I'm going to take this spot right here. I'm going to mix a little bit more white. I'm creating a nice, pretty light blue. Okay, I want this really washed out. I'm using the blue in the water and white to make a really pretty, translucent, light blue. And what I'm going to do with this is around the edges, right in here, I'm going to use this really watered down color to brighten these areas up. Okay, I'm going to need a little bit more. That's too much paint. So white paint, once again, white. I want this really thinned out. Very little paint on my brush. I don't want this to be excessively intense or thick because it will. I'm trying to create a really kind of see-through paint so I can add to these upper areas. Okay, going in. I want it streaky. Sometimes I'm using the edge of my brush like this sideways. Sometimes I'm using the broad part. All those things, changing it around causes variation, and that's what I want. As you can see, I'm painting over some of the areas I've already gone over. This is, excuse me, this is lightening things up, making them brighter. Again, same color, a little bit of white, a little bit, tiny bit of blue. So out here, really light. Now, just to be clear, everyone, if you are struggling, remember, it's okay. Be kind to yourselves above all. We are our biggest critics, our own biggest critics, right? We've heard that. We all know that pretty much. No different than painting. You got to give yourself room to grow. And yes, sometimes you might find yourself in the middle of a painting and going, "Oh, what did I do? I'm not at this level yet." Even though Jesse says it's a beginner-friendly session, I'm struggling. That is okay. Push yourself through it. When you come out on the other side, whether you created something that you enjoy or not, or that you like, you're going to be a more experienced painter on the other side. So that is a very important key to this. You often want to push yourselves through difficult pieces. I'm not saying you want to go and find a hard painting to do every single time. But when you push yourself through a difficult painting, even if you don't consider that you were successful at producing what it is that you're trying to produce, when you come out on the other side, you are much more experienced and you learned quite a bit from that session. Even if you don't feel like you have something to show for it, what you learn is going to affect your future paintings. And so I often encourage you guys, everybody, and that includes myself, that's partly how I learned, is to go through difficult sessions, push yourself, and you come out on the other side a better painter. There's no ways around it. Okay? So there we go. And again, you notice I'm overlapping here into my mountains. That's not a big deal. The reason why I do that is I don't want to stop abruptly. It's going to mess up the smoothness of my lines. I want to kind of brush through, come over to the other side, and we'll fix that later. All right, one more pass on that dark blue. We'll see what that looks like, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so this time I'm going to grab just blue like this. Because I'm not watering it down, it's going to be pretty intense. It's going to be pretty dark. I'm going to come in here, especially in this upper corner. I want this to be some of the darkest area in the painting. Pull this through, smoothing it as I go, and I kind of come through. Using the skinny edge of my brush for this part. Don't forget, folks, ask questions. If you have any, if you have questions about anything, put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer you. Now, of course, if I'm in the middle of the process here, I'm not looking over at the comments, but I will in just a moment. When this step is over, I'll look through the comments really quickly. Now, if you asked a question and I didn't answer you, it's because I didn't see it. And I don't want to scroll all the way back through the comments at the moment. I will look through those comments after the painting session's over and go through and answer or say hello to some of you, etc. But if you want, in a second, I'll be looking over at those comments again. Maybe ask your question again, and I'll be looking at those. So maybe I'll catch it. Okay, so here we go. So again, especially up in this corner, I want this a little extra on the darker side. Okay, so for now, this is about where I'm going to leave the Aurora for at least for a bit. Okay, for now. Give you guys a minute or two to catch up to that point, and then we move on to the next step. Anna says, a little late getting here. Jesse, what do I use to mix with, to clean brush with? Oh, so great question. Thank you so much for that question. Especially if you're new, this is a very important piece. When you're all done with your painting, remember, in between your steps, every time I'm done using one of the brushes, I put it right in my water cup. This keeps the paint from drying on my brush, and we don't want that to happen. Again, it will ruin your brushes, or it can ruin your brushes if you allow paint to dry on them. So that I'm not trying to clean my brushes throughout my painting process, I leave them in the water like this. And I often will have 2 water cups. When this one gets overly saturated, if I need cleaner water for a mixture, I'll use the other cup. But when you're all done with the session today, as soon as you're done with your painting session, whether you're finished with the painting or not, you want to take your brushes, use a little bit of mild dish soap, warm water, and under the water, right? You just kind of soak them up. Don't be too rough on your brushes. Just clean them up gently. When you're done, when you've rinsed them out, there's no more paint left on them, reshape them. So you'll take your brush. This is my clean. Let's say I just washed this thing. I use soap. I use soap and water, and I do this, soap in my hands, and then I rinse it out. There's no more paint coming out of it. I will reshape the brush, reform it so that it maintains its shape. Okay, and then when you let them out, set them to dry, you can put them in another cup facing upwards. You don't want any weight on the bristles themselves. So you don't want to store them like this where they're in a cup or something like that, and you're putting the weight of the handle on the bristles. It will warp those bristles and make your brush harder to work with. Okay, so again, you can also lay them on their side, on the table on their side. There's containers that you can use, but if you're real simple, on the table, on the side, no weight on those bristles, and you'll be fine. Okay? All right. Sherry says it's 86 in Missouri with 72% humidity. Ooh, that is really high. Plain air. That's it, Barbara. That's it. Plain air. Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, Barbara. And how are you, Barbara? Hope you're doing well. I don't know if I've seen you painting too much in the group. Hopefully you get a chance to paint today. Here in Labrador, we have northern lights almost every night during midwinter, mostly greens. At times, Mother Nature blesses us with pinks and yellows. Beautiful. That's what I've seen from the pictures. This is, I think, our second northern lights painting. A couple of years ago, we did one here in the painting with Jesse Page with a polar bear. There's snow. There's a little polar bear family, and then the Aurora Borealis lights on a big canvas. I think we did a 16 by 20 inch. So this is the second time. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Number 4, flat shader. Okay. Flat shader isn't really important. It's a small flat brush, rectangular like this. That's all you really need to worry about. I'm going to use my primary blue paint. I'm going to grab some black. Okay, we're going to grab a little bit of black. Put it right on my palette. Give me a second. I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to mix some black with primary blue, creating a nice dark blue that we're going to use for the mountains. Now, this is the first layer of paint for the mountains, so they're not necessarily going to look that great. They're going to look a little flat, perhaps. That's okay. All we're doing in this step is we're just refining them a bit. The paint's going to look a little transparent, a little flat. That's okay. We'll come back and refine this at a later step. So again, blue and black, and I just use the same blue that's in my sky. You could throw in purple if you got purple, blue, black, purple, if you want to make them a little bit more of a purplish color. A lot of times mountains off in the distance in the dark can have a little bit of a purplish hue to them, so you can do that by mixing these two colors with a dark purple. Okay, I'm just going to kind of clean up Again, I'm using my flat brush, my number 4 flat, just creating a little bit of a rough outline. Let me bring that up. Your mountains are going to look different than mine, okay? Your mountain range, your hill range, it's going to look a little different. So don't necessarily worry about trying to match mine exactly. And look at my brush strokes. I'm kind of going in different directions. I don't want this to be smooth. I want it to be kind of rough, right? You've got this mountain shape that's, even though it's mostly in silhouette, you can maybe tell a little bit that there's a variation in this on the surface. And so we create that with painting using brush strokes that go in different directions. All right. Okay, so there's my mountain range. Again, you guys got about a minute to catch up, and then we move on to the next step. You got it, Anna. My pleasure. My pleasure. Again, everyone, you have a question, please don't be shy. It's what we're here for, to help answer these questions. Hi, Sherry. Absolutely. Thank you, Sherry, for that question. So Sherry, who's a member of my group, she knows the answer to this, but I think she's trying to help out by putting some questions up here that some of you may find helpful. So she's asking, is there a spray to put over your painting or some type of protective step when you're done with your painting? Now this painting here is done, right? My original done. I don't have anything protecting the piece. It's acrylic paint, and even though acrylic paint is really sturdy, there's really no reason for this to unless I'm rough with it, unless I I don't store it properly or don't hang it up properly. There's really no reason that you could think of that this would be need protecting. But over time, especially if pieces are in direct sunlight, like near a window, if you hang up a picture or something like that near a window, direct sunlight can fade out the paint colors over time. Also, dust, pollutants in the air can discolor your piece. So one way that you can protect your paintings when they're completed and they're dry and everything else, and usually you want to wait a couple of days, even on acrylic paint. Acrylic paint is very quick drying, but you do want to wait a day or two before you apply anything over it. But varnish, you can spray varnish, or you can use varnish that you brush on. So a layer of varnish, a layer or two. I usually do at least 2 layers of varnish. Varnish is a clear material, liquidy material that you brush on or spray, as I mentioned. And it creates, when it dries, and it dries really fast also, it creates a protective layer over your painting that protects it from sunlight, protects it from pollutants, dust, etc. Now, varnish comes in different finishes. You can get glossy, you can get semi-gloss, you can get even the stuff that has a little bit of shimmer in it. So depends on what you're looking for. I like the glossy stuff because it brings out the really rich colors in the paint. Maybe some of you like more of a matte finish. So it just depends. But that is one way. You can also store your paintings, or you can display them behind glass. Let's say you put it into a frame with a piece of glass over it. That's another way. But the longer you paint, now if you're new to this, you don't have to worry about that. But if you do continue painting and you want to protect those paintings, that's how you would do it. Okay, you do want to consider protecting those paintings, especially if you start, really liking it and you want to preserve them, you want to give them to your kids, or who knows, maybe eventually you start to sell them. You definitely want to protect them. Okay, and then there's different ways to store them and things like that. That's another. For another day. All right, same color, folks, same color that we just used for the mountains. I'm going to come in here. Now, this is where the water is going to be. This is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create kind of a reflection. Now, I'm not going to go down too low. I'm going to create a little bit of a reflection of my mountain, kind of a mirror image. And I'm going to switch brushes here really quickly. Don't stress too much again, everyone. If it doesn't look like an exact mirror image, it doesn't have to. So I'm just creating the opposite. Again, like if we were to take that mountain range and flip it, that's kind of what I'm going for, a little bit. So it's being reflected into the water. Now this right here, I'm going to water it down just a little bit, the same color that we just used for that mountain range. And I'm going to go like this. In this case, I'm going to brush sideways because this is eventually going to be watered. I want to create a little bit of serene or calm water by using these long, smooth brush strokes. Now we'll come back and darken both of these elements later. Okay, again, you just want a somewhat of a mirror image down in here in the water. So don't stress too much about that piece of it. Okay. Okay. Oh, you did, Sherry? Okay. You forgot. All right. All right. Fair enough, Sherry, but thank you for that question. It's a great question. But definitely protecting your paintings is something you want to consider, especially if you decide that this is something that you want to do regularly, which I hope many of you do. It is a very stress relieving, for most of us, it can be a very stress relieving kind of a process. You can use it as a meditation. If you focus on just one thing and let everything else go, at least for a little while. If you could paint once a week, I highly recommend it. Something small, something basic, or something big and complicated, up to you. But it is highly, highly therapeutic. What time do we got? 12:14. Okay, we got about another 15 minutes. What you want to do from time to time, as you're going along, you want to take a step back and look at your painting from a distance. Now, normally, I would have done that at least a couple of times now throughout my painting. You don't want to get too far ahead, whether you're drawing, painting, what have you. You don't want to get too far ahead before you stop and assess where you are. You want to periodically take a little step back, maybe even look away, let your vision refresh. You kind of look around and just maybe even go to the kitchen, go for a little brief walk outside. I don't know if it's not too hot. And then come back and look at it again. Looking at your piece from a fresh point of view, you're kind of refreshing your vision by doing that little break. Again, even if it's just looking out, looking away, and whatever, you look back from a distance, you're able to better assess anything that might be off, anything that might not be where you want it to be, how you want it to be. So you look at it and you go, okay, and you kind of assess. In this case, I've got two paintings next to each other that I can use, right? I can kind of use for reference. But even if you don't, you look at what you've got on your canvas and you go, okay, how's it looking? Where do I need to make any adjustments? And there are in my Aurora Borealis and in my sky. There's a couple of things that I want to do before I consider it done. Okay, one, in this particular case, well, we'll get into that in a second, but the main things that you're looking for are big glaring differences or problems that you see that you want to address before you get too far down and then realize you've made a big mistake. It's all relative. Bob Ross, there's no happy accidents, right? But let's say you're painting for an hour and all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, my mountain range is too high up, or it's too big, it's too what have you, whatever. Now you have to decide whether you want to correct that or whether you can incorporate whatever that difference is into your painting, right? And if you can incorporate it into the painting and still keep it, keep the feel of the painting, keep the soul of the painting, perfect. But if it's something that you really need to change, you want to catch that as soon as possible, because that's going to require less steps to fix than if you get too far down the line and now you have to go back and do a lot of stuff to change it. So every 15, 20 minutes, step back, look at your piece, assess, and make corrections if needed. If you don't need to make any corrections, you're like, perfect. I love the way it's looking. I'm good to go to the next step. So really quickly, everyone, because we have another 15 minutes or so to go for today. Again, remember, tomorrow is part 2. We'll be painting at 11 a.m. once again. A little bit of water and some blue paint one more time. Just a little tiny bit of water. I just want to come up here and really darken this in, especially up in these corners or up towards the edge. I want this a little bit darker. And what I'm doing is that this is really thick or intense, and I'm brushing hard. As I'm moving down, I begin to lighten how much pressure I'm putting on the brush, because I want there to be less paint as I move down closer into my lights. Okay, and I by controlling that pressure, I'm able to vary the intensity. So as I'm pressing a little harder over here, I get more paint on the canvas. As I'm moving across, I loosen my grip and I don't press quite hard. I'm also holding my brush a little closer. You notice that, right? Because I wanted more control. So as I'm moving over, I loosen my grip a bit, but I also have a lighter touch, so that those two things combined create a lightening of that paint as I move over and into the lights of it. Now in here, I'm going to kind of come in here and intensify things a bit, just a little bit. Still a little bit of a light brush stroke. Okay, I just kind of do that. Maybe in here a bit, towards the center of this area, so that it's darker towards the middle and it lightens up as I start to move across to the edges. Okay. So this is one of the changes that I wanted to make. Okay, and then the other is, I just need a little bit more refinement in here in my lights. They're almost there. They're almost perfect, in quotes. Okay, I'm cleaning up my brush in my water cup where I just rinsed it. Now I'm going to go ahead and, let's see, I'm going to use another plate. I'm going to switch plates here. This thing's pretty muddled up. So I'm going to switch over here. I'm going to take a bit of white. I'm going to create some more of the mixture for the Aurora Borealis. Okay, a little bit of white. Don't need too much paint for this step. So a little white. Again, folks, we're nearing the end of part 2. Part 1. Sorry, I sometimes have a hard time doing more than one thing at a time. So we're nearing the end of part 1. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., we do part 2, but if you can't join in on the live, everything is being recorded. So we're going to start with just a little bit of white. Bring that over here. Throw in a smidge of the yellow, a little tiny bit of green, maybe a bit more white. I'm just going to go through here and add some touches. A little bit of water, so I dip my brush in that water, bring that over to thin this out. Mainly what I'm looking for are little streaks of color. That's a little too intense maybe, so water it down a little more. Again, a lot of times you don't know what you've got until you apply it. You notice, folks, that was pretty intense, and what I'm doing now is I'm just pulling it through to spread the paint out. Nice, loose. This isn't really tight. The grip is loose. What that does is it allows the brush to move in my hand a little bit as I'm doing this. If I want lots of control, then I tighten the grip on the brush and get precision. Okay, but in this case, it's loose. I can also hold it further back, as I've already mentioned, back on the handle. All those little things that you're going to learn as you go are going to create that experience that you need to create more and more, what's the word I'm looking for? complex paintings, more elaborate paintings. Okay, so again, and this doesn't all have to be the same color. I can vary it a bit. I want variation in here. Lots of little subtle things that take you from being an inexperienced painter to an intermediate painter, and from an intermediate painter to a good painter, let's say. And you could be a good beginner painter, you could be a good intermediate painter, but like to really go, hey, that person's making some really nice paintings. It's lots of little subtle things, and the best way to pick those up. Very few people have those things naturally, instinctively. You pick them up by doing, by experimenting, by joining in on live sessions like this, from watching others, from painting on your own. Lots of different ways to gain it, from taking classes, etc., etc. But a lot of it you can learn just by doing. Okay. So again, all I'm doing is coming through here and creating some variation. I'm going to take a bit more white now. Water that down. So the last touches, everyone, we're going to put some stars in the sky here in just a bit. Okay, so thinning this white out quite a bit. Actually, I'm going to take a little touch of my blue, tiny bit. Even that's probably too much. I just have a tiny bit on that corner. And let's say, put it right there. And now mix it in. So I'm making almost like a sea foam. I know it's sea foam green, but I want to say sea foam blue. And right here. Really light touch. Using my finger, all this area is dry, so I'm able to touch the canvas, and it helps me control where I'm applying the paint, because this is a little bit more controlled. Maybe here. All right. That's looking pretty good. I do like it. Maybe going to streak things up a tiny bit more over here. This is a really, really light touch. I've got very little paint left on my brush. Almost no paint on my brush. I'm using this to come out here and along the edges and maybe up in here a little bit. Oops, a little too intense up there, so paper towel. Little tiny bit of water. Tiny bit of water on here now. Just so they're not too intense. Okay. All right. We're going to create some stars now, everyone. Awesome, Rose Demezi. Fantastic. Your first class. Oh, June. Yeah, you did the polar bear painting. Awesome. Yeah, that polar bear painting was really quite a bit of fun. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to create the little stars in the background. Now, some of those you're going to be able to, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You could use a small little tiny brush to just touch your canvas with. It gives you a little more control. Okay, you can use the back of a brush. You dip that. So just to give you an example, you can dip your brush into paint directly like this. And all I did was dip it right into my white paint. And then, now here's the tricky part though. This requires lots of control. You have to be able to put your finger on the canvas. And you can even, I can even do my other hand here up against the other side of the canvas and use that to control my hand. It's a really light touch. Okay, where you're just barely touching the canvas and you get a little tiny bit of paint on there. That's one way to do it. Okay, you can also take a really small brush, a little pointy brush, and even the corner of one of these brushes. So again, I dip it right into I want to make sure I'm just barely touching the paint. Okay, I don't want to go too much, otherwise I'll get too much paint on here. And just a real light touch. Now, this is dry enough where I can put my hand on it, And I just touch. I'm not getting anything on the canvas because, oh, there we go. Wasn't. So it's about control. Lots of different ways. So I've got a few little dots on there. It's about finding what's best for you. But another way that you can do this might be a little easier for some of you, but it's also going to be a little bit dangerous. I'll tell you what I mean. I'm taking some water right from my cup. Actually, I'm going to use my clean water because this water has paint in it, right? So clean water. Cleaner water. I just realized I used it earlier. I used it when I was practicing. So it's not that clean. That's okay. It doesn't need to be. The white's going to overpower this quite a bit. So watered down white paint. Okay. What I'm going to do is this. Before I even go and attempt this on the canvas, so I'm saturating my brush with white, with pretty wet white paint. I'm going to take my brush in a moment. I'm going to pull on the bristles. And what that's going to do is when I let them go, it's going to flick paint onto the canvas. Another thing that you can do is you take another brush, and this usually works best when the canvas is laying flat on the table. But you can take another brush like this, hold it with one hand, and go. I'm not going to do it, but I take the brush and I hit this brush. It's going to spray paint in little droplets onto the canvas, right? I go get all that on there. But before I do either one of those methods, I'll take the brush and I'm going to do this. I'm flicking any excess paint onto my canvas. That helps avoid me getting any big gobs of paint on the canvas all at once. This gives me a little bit more control. Okay, and I'm not getting anything there. Okay, give me a second. Technical difficulties, that's all right. We'll figure them out. A little bit more paint, a little bit more water. This may not be the proper brush for it. I may have to switch brushes in a second. Something a little bit with a little more snap. There we go. I'm getting some. These are really small. Now I'm having to pull back pretty hard and flicking. Okay, this brush is a little too loose for this. So maybe one with a little more snap will do, okay? Switching over, grabbing some paint, the same thing, a little more white. So I would suggest practicing this first on a scratch piece of canvas, or there we go. This has a little more snap to it. So now I'm getting little tiny droplets. Again, this also would work best with the canvas laying flat on the table because gravity will help me get more droplets on the canvas. But for the purposes of the session, I've got to do this standing up. I keep saying that one day I'm going to change the angle of my painting so I'm able to paint on the table, but this still works. Don't forget, everybody, we are getting close to the end of our session. If you're not following the page, please do so. Painting with Jesse, both on Facebook and on YouTube, whichever one you're on. Also, right immediately afterwards, in the event page and on the main discussion board on Painting with Jesse on Facebook, I'm going to post a link to the email list for those of you that want to be emailed every time I have events. It's one of the easy ways to keep track of what's happening here. Facebook doesn't always send you notifications, even if you are following the page. So I'm just coming over to the sides here and adding. You gotta be patient. That's another thing with painting. You gotta be patient. If you're not patient and you want to create pretty paintings, you're gonna have to learn a little bit of patience, because it is definitely some of those things. It's one of those things that requires patience. Okay. So tomorrow, when we continue, we're going to assess, and then we could add more stars. We could also refine our lights a little bit if we need to. Okay, before we move on to anything else, we're going to take a moment at the beginning and assess where we are. And you'll see me kind of look at it. I guarantee you tomorrow, when I come and look at this with fresh vision, fresh eyes, I'll be able to better assess what I've got. So I recommend that you do the same thing. And maybe come back later in the day, look at it again, maybe later today. Look at it before we continue tomorrow. Maybe go back to the video later today and whatever you need to fix, if there's anything to fix. Again, we'll come back and add a few more stars tomorrow. I've got some stars down in these little areas that I'll add those tomorrow when we come back. Okay. Of course, tomorrow we'll be refining the water. We'll be adding more touches of paint to the mountain. We'll be putting in. This will be towards the end of the session, but we'll have reflections in the water. Our foreground's going to get created. Our trees are going to go up. And then last thing we're going to do is add in the tent and all the colors that you see here on the floor. Okay, there's still quite a few steps left. So I know for sure from the moment that we start to paint tomorrow, we are going to paint for at least a full hour and a half. Okay, maybe a little bit more, but I'm going to make sure we take our time with it. All right, let's see. Any questions or anything, folks, please put them down in the comments. You got me for another maybe 2 to 5 minutes. It just depends on how many questions I can answer and such. But let's see. Angie says, having trouble with bristles for snow. I used back tip of a brush to do them. Yep, that's fine. Also, you can take a toothbrush. Another way to do this method is to take a toothbrush. Toothbrushes tend to have a really good snap back. When you pull on them and you let go, they snap back. The bristles come back pretty quick, and that can help you. First, before you go and do it directly on your canvas, you want to practice. Okay, don't do it first few times on your canvas, because if you have large gobs of paint fly out, you're going to have giant stars, and that's not going to be fun. You can fix that, but it's more work. So make sure you're practicing. You got it, June. My pleasure. Thank you so much, June, for joining in today. Have a good night. Let's see. All right. Let's see what else do we have. Don't forget, everyone, when you're done today, wash your paints, wash your brushes. Okay, wash your brushes. Very important. Wash them, reshape them. So again, you're going to want to wash your brushes with a little bit of soap and water under the sink. Now, I like to clean these in a container with soap and water, where I'll go like this in a container. Okay, clean them up. In the container, I can make sure that there's no more paint in here. So the proper way to dispose of paint water isn't to throw it down your sink. Is to actually, you can put it in a container. There's recycle centers and places like that. You can also let your water evaporate, especially right now in this heat. Let the water evaporate and leaves a paint residue at the bottom, and then that you can throw in the trash. It depends on your area. You can throw in your trash, or you can accumulate it over months and months, and then take it to a paint recycling center. There are proper ways to get rid of paint. I know a lot of paint. I didn't do it for years, but anyway, so that's for another time to talk about. But clean these up. Make sure you little soap and water, rinse them up, and then reshape your brushes. Reshape them so that they stay nice and formed for a very long time. All right, let's see what else. You got it, Stephanie. My pleasure. Thank you so much for joining in. Okay, thank you so much. And then Susan says, my first time from hot Florida. Hi, Susan. Welcome. Hot Florida. I've been there when it was hot. It was very humid. I think I went, I'm trying to remember what time of year I went. I went a couple of times, and both times it was very hot time and humid, but still loved my time over there. I was on vacation. I went for vacation and for work. Sherry says, I've got to learn to do trees. Trees are tricky, Sherry, but come on and join tomorrow. I think I have a pretty simple way to teach this type of tree. Whoop. Knocking things over. Okay, this type of tree where it's mostly in silhouette. These pine trees is what I'm going to be teaching tomorrow. I think I've got a pretty good way to teach them, and so, you'll be okay. And what we're going to be using is just a couple of flat brushes for that. Maybe the number 4 flat shader, something like this. Okay. You can also use a pointy brush for the little details, but primarily we'll be using a brush like this to create things. Yeah, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Good, Renu, fantastic. Thank you for joining in. Okay. Good, Sherry. Glad to hear that. I know you talked about being in a little bit of a slump in our group. You mentioned that, so I'm glad to hear that. It happens. We all get into painting slumps or creative slumps, and the best way that I can tell you to get through them is to take little bits of a painting or just a session where you're just kind of not painting for any reason, but to just paint, doodle, just to draw, without any expectation. Usually, but keep it simple, kind of like today, right? Short, kind of to the point session. It'll help you get past your slumps. At least that's what I found has been very helpful. You got it, Kay. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Toothbrush works great. Yep, absolutely. Dina says, first time watcher. Awesome work. Thank you so much, Dina. And thank you for joining in today. Appreciate it. Sherry says, I'm actually wearing paint. That's pretty common. All right. So let me scroll back down, look at the last of the comments. Jesse, trees tomorrow. My mountains are so dark. What color should I do my trees to get them visible? Extremely dark green. So you could do them in green. If you use the blue and the black over here, you can also lighten up your mountains. You can also, once they're dry, you can take a little bit of a lighter color, say blue and black with a little bit of white to lighten them up. Just because they're really dark right now doesn't mean they have to stay that way. You can add a lighter layer of paint over them, and that will bring them up. If you notice here on the original painting, there isn't that much of a difference between the trees and the mountain. Yes, the trees are darker, but what makes the tree stand out even more is that we have some highlights on the side where the tent is. That's right? The tent is lit up. You got a light source in there. Whoever's in there hanging out, it's got a lamp or something. It's creating a glow. It's emanating from the tent, and it's reflecting onto the ground, but it's also being reflected on the inside of those trees, right? So facing the trees, the side that's facing the tent, that's where you're seeing that light being reflected. So that will also help the trees stand out away from the mountains. But if you want to make your mountains a little bit lighter, just wait till they're dry and then add a layer on top that's mixed with a little bit of white to raise that color. Alternatively, if you want to make your trees green, you can, or you can make your trees just a lighter version of the original, okay, with highlights also, but a lighter color to make them contrast against that background. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right. Sherry says, I spent about 2 hours trying to make an average pine tree with snow for my grandmother as a gift. It looks okay, but needs work. That's okay, Sherry, especially at the beginning. I don't know how long you've been painting. I don't want to assume. Trees might just be a sticky part for you, right? As they are for lots of people. Trees, even today in my membership group, we've been at it for going on 2 years next month. And some of the original people that started with me are still there, and they still struggle with trees a bit. Trees and water, clouds, those are things that, can be troublesome. Even myself, if I haven't done a cloud in a while, when I go back to do clouds, especially if they're really detailed clouds, I've got to practice a bit. I got to remember, bring back that muscle memory and things like that. So you're not alone. Okay, and don't stress about that. It is about practice. It's about approaching it in different ways, because I may make trees look easy with a particular brush, but for you, that brush just doesn't sit well in your hand. A different brush may work better for you. So you want to experiment a lot, especially on those things that are troublesome for you. Okay? By experimenting, you find your way. Okay? You could learn from lots of other people and pick something up from Jesse. You pick something up from Bob Ross. You pick something from the Art Sherpa, just to name a few instructors out there, right? You can pick up things. You can pick up something from your friend Brenda, but in the end, what you're trying to do is you're trying to come up with what works best for you, and it might be a combination of a few different things, or maybe your friend Brenda nails it for you, and you're like, perfect. But it's practice, okay? Linda Bell says, watching first time, Nova Scotia, Canada. Fantastic, Linda. Welcome. Thank you for being here. All right. I think we are. Whoops. Yep. She's awesome, Sherry. She's awesome. You got it, Wanda. My pleasure. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much, everybody. Once again, tomorrow, 11 o'clock Pacific time, same time as today, will be part 2. If you can't join in on the live session, don't stress about it. I hope you can because it makes it more fun. But if you need to paint with a recorded session, then that's how it is. Okay, recorded session will be available for both of these. Even this one here, as soon as it's over, you can start right back up from the beginning and you'll be good to go. Okay, I know some people like to watch first and paint afterwards. That is definitely a good idea, especially if you're newer. You get to kind of learn and pick things up just from watching. Okay, and everybody learns a little differently. So you know, that's how that goes. But all right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope to see all of you tomorrow. Okay, have an amazing rest of your day or night wherever you are. Hopefully you're staying cool and refreshed and everything else. All right. Okay. Thank you again. We'll see you tomorrow.